So you may have seen this clip of Dragon's Den going viral. The dragons are being pitched a boba tea company, and the actor Simu Liu calls them out for cultural appropriation. That clip is now everywhere. It's triggered quite a conversation. Today on the show, what we can learn from the Dragon's Den drama. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Okay, listen, let's just get right into it. You know the show. You know Dragon's Den. It's where entrepreneurs bring their ideas or their products and then they pitch them to the dragons. And they say, dragons, I've got this thing. Please give me money so I can make my company bigger. That's the rough idea of Dragon's Den. I love Dragon's Den, but also it is not usually a show that goes this viral until this weekend. I could tell you what happened, but I actually think you should listen to this exchange between Dragon's Den celebrity dragon, Simu Liu, and the owners of a startup bubble tea style company based in Quebec.
What respect is being paid to this very Asian drink that has blown up around the world? And is it in your teas? Is it in your product development? Who is on your staff? Who is on your cap table that is allowing that for you?
It's a good question.
Listen, yes, bubble tea is a hugely popular drink in North America, but it originated in Taiwan, and Simu is Chinese, and he's a huge bubble tea fan. And as far as we can tell, the owners of this bubble tea style company are not Asian. So they're pitching. Simu was not particularly impressed. He raised that what they were doing could be cultural appropriation. Then that segment went viral. I mean, I saw the story on the front page of the BBC yesterday. Karon Liu has been following the story like most of us. He's with me now. Karon, welcome to the show, friend. How's it going?
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm happy that you're here. Listen, we played a bit of that exchange between Simu Liu and one of the entrepreneurs trying to sell the dragons on this drink. The entire segment was like 9 minutes long. Tell me about your reaction to watching this thing.
I mean, I don't think this is the answer that you're expecting, but I'm thinking, do we really need another bubble tea company in 2020s? My goodness, like there are 6 places I can walk to from my house and they're all on delivery apps. And I go to the supermarket. I know this is a audio medium, but I'm holding up a bag of 5-minute bobas that I got for like $3 at my supermarket.
Right.
Is there a yearning for this much boba? Like it's an oversaturated market, isn't it?
I mean, they were saying that, they were already selling millions of dollars. They were in Costco. What they were looking for is some money in order to expand into the US. And one of the ways that they framed this, one of the ways that these investors framed this is the idea of disrupting boba, disrupting a drink that is already so incredibly popular. What's your reaction when you hear something like that?
First up, whenever a startup says we're disturbing something, I'm like, we really got to pick a different word for it. And I mean, I know their whole thing was, making quote unquote healthier boba or stuff like that. But I feel like so many bubble tea chains, you can already say how much sugar you want in there. And if you want none at all, like you don't want your pearls or whatever to have any sugar, you can just make it at home. It's so easy. My bag says 5-minute bobas, but they are down to 1 minute now. In
the technology has advanced.
Technology. It used to be 3 hours when 10 years ago.
I will say it's not particularly, I think, the uniqueness of the product that got people talking. It seems to me that what people reacted to from this company's pitch, and it's a Quebec company, is the way they sort of framed the idea of boba and like the boba you can get. One of the things that they said is, you go and get boba and you don't know what's in this drink. They seem to sort of cast some suspicions around it, be like, well, you don't have enough information about the tea that you're drinking, and that felt uncomfortable, I think, for a lot of people to watch.
Yeah, well, I mean, bubble tea, it's like that. The co-owner said, it's tea, popping boba, or the tapioca pearl. So there's a difference.
Yep.
There's a difference between the two.
Yep.
And fruit if you want to be fancy. And that's pretty much what's in like all the other bubble tea places. Of the other bubble tea chains and menus that have existed. And I don't think it's the issue is that these owners aren't Asian or Taiwanese. I mean, there are big chains out there like Hey Tea and Hey Sugar. They come from mainland China.
Yeah.
Palgong tea is from South Korea. Dunkin' Donuts, you can add like that popping boba onto your drinks. They did that since 2021. And earlier this summer, Starbucks also introduced popping boba drinks, and no one said anything.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's the way that the pitch was worded that I think it started this whole thing. The way that it's framed.
Yeah.
Saying that other bubble teas had ingredients that didn't people know about, or wanting to create a healthier version.
Yeah.
I think that's what kind of set it off. Because I think historically, Chinese food in Western society has been kind of stereotyped as being unhealthy and containing weird or harmful ingredients like MSG or whatever like that. So I think saying that, people don't know what's in existing bubble tea, it kind of unintentionally perpetuates that stereotype.
I want to play another clip from this Dragon's Den episode. Here's Simu explaining to the business owners why he wasn't going to be supporting their business.
I started this venture company for a lot of reasons, but really primarily to uplift minority entrepreneurs. And not only do I feel like this is not happening here, but that I would be uplifting a business that is profiting off of something that feels so dear to my cultural heritage. I want to be a part of bringing boba to the masses, but not like this. So for that reason, I'm out.
Okay, so Simu was out, but then that segment ended not with that. It ended with a bidding war between several of the Dragon's Den judges. Eventually, the company chose this winning bid from another dragon, Manjit Minhas. But once the segment kind of went viral, both, I would say, the business owners and Manjit reportedly received a wave online harassment and backlash. Simu himself has called for people to tone it down. And then since then, I think you've seen both Manjit and the business owners issue their own apologies. What do you make of the responses and the sort of social media maelstrom around this?
Yeah. I mean, no one deserves death threats and online harassment. But, I think just the nature of the internet, everyone will forget about this in 2 days. For Manjit, look, if you can cut a check for $1 million after an elevator pitch, you will be fine. You will be fine.
That is kind of the job of being a dragon. Yes, that is. Yes. Yeah.
You're not going to take advice from me. As for the boba, with how do I pronounce it? It's boba with 2 B's.
I think they're still pronouncing it boba, even though they spell it with 2 B's instead of 1 B. I think that's the impression that I'm getting. I see that you're making this face of distress over what do I do with this? That's fair.
Well, I'm just how do I Google that?
that's reasonable.
But yeah. I think when they first came on, it was we're from Quebec. We're launching a boba tea company. I'm kind of oh, you know what? That's really cool. I hope that they put a Canadian spin on it, come up with some flavors that aren't on the market right now. Maybe some maple popping boba, or pawpaws, that go with their fruit thing, because pawpaws a tropical tasting fruit that's found in Canada. I would love to see that instead. Or they're doing alcoholic bobas, which has been done before.
Yeah.
Maybe pair up with a local distillery, or a winery, or a craft brewery. I was I would have loved to see that instead. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think one thing that I sort of noticed is there's been a bit of a reaction to the reaction, which is to say Simu sort of issued this statement, and one of the things that he said is hey, maybe in Quebec they're not particularly familiar with some of these cultures, and some people have responded to Simu being no, this is not a Quebec problem. This is please don't put this as something that is kind of basically paint Quebecers with this brush. So it's kind of introduced us to a lot of different layers of this conversation. There's been so much conversation around this Dragon's Den episode. The Rock weighed in, Tom Cruise weighed in, Lucy Liu weighed in. Tom Cruise commented. Tom Cruise was I think we should listen to what Simu has to say. And so I'm going to ask you, what do you think the story should teach us about cultural appropriation as we kind of watch the scale of it get, bigger and bigger?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I think it's great when you want to cook food from different cultures and share recipes across borders. It's how cuisines evolve. It's how new dishes are created. It's the best part of being alive, just to be able to share and try
Yeah.
foods and make foods from all around the world. But that being said, if your business is a product from a culture that's not your own, you just have to be very careful on how you present it and be aware of sometimes some of like the baggage that comes with that product. You just have to really just do your research and be very careful about wording your pitch, especially if you're going on national TV and with TikTok being a thing. I don't know if you have to sign an NDA before you go on Dragon's Den. I'm assuming you have. I would have broken it. I would have talked to everyone I know and go over my elevator pitch and be like, are there any red flags? Are there any red flags? Am I going to become a meme?
I think the idea of warning people against becoming a meme or becoming the face of the cultural appropriation conversation, even for a day, yeah, that's a good warning. And I think that's a good place to leave it. Karon, I really appreciate you being here, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I'm going to go make some boba now.
Please do.
Morning cup of boba.
And then send some this way. Okay, good to talk to you. Thanks so much for being here, friend. Thank you. Karon Liu is a food reporter for the Toronto Star. For more on this story, go to cbcnews.ca. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Chances are, if you know this music, then you might be obsessed with the Korean reality show Culinary Class Wars, because that's the music that you hear right at the moment that you're waiting to find out who won a really hard challenge or has been eliminated, or you're just waiting to see, like, okay, what's the thing that's going to happen next? And then the episode, it just ends. Like, the credits just roll, and then you throw a pillow at your television. At least that's what I do. I've never seen cliffhangers like the way that this show's doing cliffhangers, because cooking competition shows don't normally have cliffhangers like this. But that's just one of the things that Culinary Class Wars is doing differently. This series is a huge hit for Netflix. It's been the #1 non-English TV show for the past 3 weeks globally. The finale is out now. We know now there's been renewed for season 2. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to Culinary Class Wars. Michelle Cho is here. Roxana Hadidi is here. Michelle, Roxana, welcome to the show, friends.
Hello.
Hey.
Didn't mean to give you anxiety by playing that music. My bad. That's that's on me. Roxana, can you briefly describe the premise of Culinary Class Wars?
Yeah, so it has a sort of faux political premise in that there is a group of unnamed chefs called the Black Spoons.
Yes.
And a group of like named, famous, established chefs called the White Spoons. And the Black Spoons are not allowed to use their given names. They're only allowed to use nicknames that they choose for themselves. But the White Spoons get all of the like acclaim and respect and all this stuff that they have built over the years. So it's a very sort of simple, like, who is better core premise.
Yeah.
But it is wrapped in, yes, these like absurd challenges that are so creative and dynamic.
Yeah.
The like electronica challengers-esque score. And it just gets very, very hyped very quickly.
It is a very challenger score. Also, I should say, like, as people are hearing you describe that, you go, what a wonderful premise. Maybe, is that 10 chefs? 12? No, we start with 100 chefs.
100,
and so just the pure scale of this thing, at least at first, is kind of truly unimaginable. Michelle, the idea that Class Wars is in the title is that's a big selling concept. That's a big sort of lofty thing. How much do you think that premise actually works in the show?
So I will say that there is a kind of something a little bit lost in translation, or maybe can be added if I explain the translation.
Yeah.
So Culinary Class War is actually the literal translation of part of the Korean title, which is 요리 계급 전쟁. So 계급 is the word class, but it can also mean just level or tier. So, I mean, it's really fascinating because throughout the series, like this idea of class difference, it morphs. So it's like, is it credentialed versus self-taught? Is it like master versus apprentice? Is it elite versus popular? It's all of those things at different times. And so I would say that's like a pretty neoliberal approach actually to
Yeah.
this like idea of overcoming difference.
Yeah.
And so it's not a coherent political statement at all, although it's playing on the association with some other Korean content that's been super successful. For example, Squid Games, right?
Yes.
Where that class distinction idea was so important. But it's also kind of ingenious because it sets up like the maximally dramatic but wide range of possible matchups. And it kind of negotiates this question of like, is the difference between these competitors attributable to individual talent, or is it structural in some ways? It's kind of, it's always skirting that, or it's able to encompass all of it. So I think the concept works, but it can also be disappointing for some viewers who are maybe expecting more of the politics.
There are critiques of neoliberalism everywhere for those with the eyes to see. Roxana, can you talk about some of the other? I mean, for real, Roxana, can you talk about some of the other differences that this show does that maybe other food competition shows like MasterChef, like Top Chef, like they don't take the same kind of approach?
Well, I think something that is really fascinating here, and the whole setup is very similar to Physical 100, which is another South Korean reality show that has been big on Netflix.
Yes.
Huge, incredible, wonderful show. I love these shows. But like Top Chef, Chopped, a lot of these Food Network shows and Bravo shows are very, very episodic.
Yeah.
You can turn one on and you understand like, okay, there are 3 self-contained challenges or 2 challenges. The judging is sort of nebulous. You don't always get a glimpse into how decisions are made.
Yeah.
And I would say that the challenges are generally pretty static, right? It's like make one meal, you have half an hour.
Yeah.
I think what Culinary Class Wars, which is so fascinating, is that every episode is changing up the physical space. They're in this like huge warehouse set that they're, always like raising up walls and showing like another hallway to another space. But also just the challenges and how they judge them are very fascinating. As you said, we start with 100, right? And there is immediately this cutthroat elimination where those 80 black spoons have to cook a meal and each judge takes one bite and you're in or you're out, right? So there is a very rapid sort of pace that is established in the beginning. But then, you might get an episode where nobody goes home. You might get an episode where 20 minutes in, there's an elimination, 40 minutes in, there's an elimination, and then the cliffhanger is something totally unrelated. So there's just a lot of changes in terms of challenge structure and the transparency of the judges. I love that we see the notes on the meal, right? That is, as someone who just watches a lot of American food TV, that is amazing. You never get that in American food TV.
They just take a bite and you go, they don't even tell you what they're judging on.
They want to keep the judges very mysterious. Whereas here, I think there is a lot of built-in transparency that makes it really fascinating to watch.
I should say, you mentioned Physical 100. I'm glad that you did, because like we've talked a little bit on the show, like at a certain point on this show, on Culinary Class Wars, there's 50 individual cooking stations, and then there's sometimes like 4 restaurants in the space that you're talking about. The scale of this thing is so hard to communicate. And like, I know that we've talked on the show before about how Netflix is spending a lot of money on Korean shows. I think it's like $2.5 billion that they announced last year. This show cost $7.3 million to make. That is wildly expensive. And the fact that like they're willing to do that really shows, I should say that's a rumor. It's not a confirmed number, but the rumor is $7.3 million to make. That's a very expensive show, but it's because with so many Korean shows, like the scale works so beautifully. Like Physical 100 begins with 100 contestants and very quickly it's whittled down. Same kind of idea here. And I love the idea of a reality show where you're rooting for that many people, at least at the start, Michelle. I want to talk about, can we talk about the food for a moment? We want to focus on the food and the eating on the show. How did you feel that this was different from other food competitions that you watched?
Yeah, well, so, I mean, Roxana already mentioned that you get sort of a window into how the chefs or how the judges are experiencing the food through their notes, and there's kind of this extensive feedback. There's blindfolded judging, which I hadn't seen before on a food show, which, I mean, it's so interesting because, you can't really... the judges are limiting how they're experiencing the food because they're not seeing it. But
they don't even know what it is, though. Like they're eating, they
right,
literally don't know what they're
exactly.
looking at, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
then it gives you a kind of window on the judges' palates, because
Yes.
when they're able to identify what the food is, you're like, oh, okay, these people really are legit and they should be sitting in these judges' chairs.
Yes.
But it invites the viewer to try to co-experience or imagine what they may be experiencing in a way that I think is quite different from like the judging segments on other shows.
Yeah.
Korea is the birthplace of mukbang, which is like, that
Yeah.
kind of spectacle of eating. And I would argue that mukbang really changed in some ways the way that we think about what food porn is. It's no longer just like meticulously staged images of food. It's the spectacle of someone actually eating it and like the way that you can imagine what that would be like.
Yeah.
That kind of visceral.
Bringing drama to it in a way.
Yeah. So you get some aspects of that. You don't get the excess exactly
No.
of the like typical mukbang, but you do get that invitation to try to co-experience, which I think is somewhat new.
Roxana, I want to mention the fact like all the chefs in the competition were Korean chefs or chefs with restaurants in Korea, except for Edward Lee, Korean American chef, won Iron Chef America. What did you think about Edward Lee being included in the show?
As a Top Chef fan, I was like, oh, I know this face.
Yes.
I've been to this restaurant.
Yeah.
So I think it was honestly very clever, and that's not to discredit his journey. His narrative over the course of the season is probably the closest thing I think to like an American or Western food show, and that it is very much about what this food means to him, returning to his country of origin. He's very honest about his Korean not being great, right? So he is very upfront about this food being an internal experience for him. And to go back to the cleverness, I thought it was very smart for someone like me who was intrigued by the concept, but needed like a familiar face to sort of latch onto. It's incredibly canny, I think, to include like one recognizable face for a foreign audience who is watching. And then something that is also really interesting in the show is like the judges really talk about how appealing this food would be to a non-Korean palate. And that is,
they talk about it almost constantly, Michelle. Like it's actually like
constantly.
It's a constant reference in the show. Like, oh, this would work for a non-Korean audience all the time. Were you surprised by how much the show kind of harped on that point?
I was not.
Okay.
Because as somebody who's pretty familiar with, Korean media and the Korean context. So it's in those moments that you get a sense of, I would say, a major anxiety, but also an aspiration that like Koreans at large hold at this contemporary moment, which is to be quote unquote global. So they're always kind of thinking about how is our culture, how is, what we produce perceived by an outsider, because we want that validation. We're starting to get it. And it's kind of like, it's so important, and we want to kind of maintain the interest that the world has in us. And so that's, I think, what's getting conveyed, because the show does a lot of work to actually introduce overseas audiences to like the specificity of Korean cuisine too. Like there are ingredient challenges, and a lot of these ingredients are really super, super local. But so it also kind of clues us into the way that this show is actually part of a bigger project, which is the branding, I guess the national branding of culture as like K culture or Korean way of culture. So food is a big part of that. And it's a place where, people can like literally access and consume Korean culture, like in their mouths, in their bodies,
Yeah, I mean, like we talk about this idea of, like we take Parasite, we take Squid Game, and we take Culinary Class War, and this notion of quote unquote Korean soft power that is kind of showing up in so many different aspects of pop culture. This show and the idea, the constant referencing of like, oh, this would work for this kind of audience that is not Korean, is kind of regularly, I think, like very well baked into that larger conversation. I gotta say, Roxana and Michelle, I want to talk about this forever, but I gotta leave it there. I appreciate your time. Thank you guys so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It was really fun.
It's been a delight. Thank you so much. Michelle Cho is a professor with the Department of East Asian Studies at the University of Toronto. Roxana Hadidi is a TV critic at Vulture. You can stream the full season of Culinary Class Wars right now on Netflix. That is it for the show today. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. Guess what? Tomorrow is another day. I'll be here. If you'll be here, we're going to have a great time. See you then.